On today's show, Florida personal injury attorney Todd Smith, tech leader and founder of Todd Smith Law. We'll be talking about becoming an AI law firm and moving beyond just dabbling with AI to building an intentional AI strategy across your entire practice, integrating AI into daily operations, training your team so that the entire firm is using it, all to help your firm increase productivity, serve clients better, and future-proof your practice.
Are you training the team about how they can use AI, and maybe even just opening up, which is something that we're starting to do, is have a meeting where we just talk about AI best practices or use cases. How did you use AI this week? What did you think about, what kind of new way did you use AI this week that you can share with everybody else?
Welcome to the Alpha Lawyer Podcast, a show dedicated to exploring what makes law firms thrive. I'm your host, Jason Marsh. Join me as I interview some of the smartest thought leaders and accomplished law firm owners in our space. Together, we'll dive deep into law firm operations, marketing, technology, finance, and everything else you need to build an incredible firm that allows you to live your best life. Hello, welcome back to the Alpha Lawyer Podcast. I'm Jason Marsh. Today, I'm joined by Todd Smith. Hey, what's up, Todd?
Hey, Jason. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, so listen, I don't think it would be a shocker to say that a lot of lawyers, and I'm not pointing any fingers here, are generally a little on the slow side of adopting new technology into their firms. But you've always been really, I think, at the leading edge with new technology in your law firm, whether it's document management or practice management tools. And so I'm really interested to see what you're up to with AI in your firm, some of the cool ways you're implementing it. But before I get into that, I want to give you a proper intro here. So for everybody that doesn't, I imagine most people listening already know you, Todd, but for those few that don't, Todd is the founder of Todd Smith Law, personal injury firm in Orlando. He's been helping injury victims for 30 plus years, handling cases ranging from wrongful death to motor vehicle accidents. But he's also been a leader in the Florida legal community. He's served on the Orange County Bar Executive Committee, along with lots of other committees, including the Tech Committee. And he's someone I know that likes to share practical insights with other lawyers on technology, time management, and now, of course, AI in the practice of law. So Todd, really nice to have you on the show here.
Hey, Jason, it's great to be with you. And you're right, man. All these, the way that technology and AI in particular now is going to, change all of our practices and impact our lives. It's a great topic. So super excited to be here with you today to kick it around.
Yeah, cool, man. Because it really does seem like AI is all anyone can talk about now, right? And in almost any context. Like, I mean, we could be talking about a law firm, we could be talking about, a medical thing or something else. But, and rightly so, because the technology is extraordinary, right? Like even, 5-10 years ago, I don't think we could have really fully envisioned what this is, even if we could envision it at all. And I only really dare to imagine what it's going to look like in a couple years, let alone 5 or 10. So I think adopting AI technology now, learning it, but more importantly, growing with it as it evolves is going to be so essential for any business, legal or otherwise, to stay competitive. So anyway, I'm excited to hear about, what you're doing in your firm. I know you've been experimenting a lot with AI, and you've said, it's really no longer about just using AI in kind of the most basic sense, but thinking with AI and intentionally designing your firm's future around it. So essentially becoming what you would call an AI law firm. Tell me about that.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So yeah, that's kind of the topic I've been talking about lately. And some of this really came for me, I got really interested in AI, and, ChatGPT came out in November of 2022. And around that time, I had discovered these copywriting tools. I think Copysmith AI was one I was using. Oh. Jasper was another one. And they were kind of, I think, at the beginning of this AI stuff where you could put in an outline or put in a topic and it could write a blog article for you or help you rewrite a letter or something like that you drafted. And when I discovered those tools, I thought, this is amazing, this is awesome. But I had no idea what was coming next. I kind of heard about AI, I knew it was coming, but had no idea, right, how it was going to impact everything, right? Especially not just, like you said, legal practices, but pretty much every facet of industry, culture, society, and we're just really getting started.
Yeah, I mean, because I use ChatGPT all day long. I dare say, I almost can't do anything without at least consulting it, right? Like, I'm thinking about doing this, taking this trip, or what alternatives might be available. Because I do love the sort of the topic that you've been discussing, becoming an AI law firm. You ever think about writing a book on this, or rather having AI write the book for you?
Well, yeah, right. I mean, these days AI could probably write it for me pretty quickly. Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about. And here, the idea and the whole concept of this becoming an AI law firm really started because I've been researching this stuff and learning about it for, the last, several months, year and a half or more. But I think we're getting to a place, especially with law firms and attorneys, attorneys are kind of resistant to change in the first place. And I have a theory on that, which is that, lawyers were taught to kind of look at the law based on case precedent, right? So an issue that's been decided previously, you look at the case precedent on that, and so we're kind of bound by what's happened in the past. That's sort of the way lawyers think. So a lot of times when it comes to running our businesses, which a lot of lawyers don't really learn how to run a business in law school, obviously, you have to learn that after law school. Whether you're in business for yourself or not, you still have to learn how to use, these new tools and technology. And lawyers are usually pretty resistant to change and resistant to new technologies. So in the AI space, I think we're kind of getting to a place where I hear it from lawyers, there's almost some AI fatigue, where you've got one group of lawyers that they're not using it hardly at all, so they want to bash it and say it's, I don't need AI, I can write better than AI. AI hallucinates and only gets things wrong, so how is it going to save me time if everything it does is wrong, right? That's kind of one group of lawyers. And then there's another group that's just sort of experimenting and playing around with it, but they're just scratching the surface, right? They're just using AI to maybe write an email, maybe do some marketing or some social media posts, right? And then there's attorneys at the highest level and organizations and law firms at the highest level that are strategically thinking about how to incorporate AI into every facet of their law firm. And so right now, kind of what I'm doing in some of my presentations and speaking engagements I'm doing and counseling other attorneys and mentoring lawyers is to ask, where are you at with your stage, with your mindset about AI, right? Are you at the exploring stage where you're just kind of playing around, maybe testing it out, maybe writing some emails? Are you at the engaging stage where you're engaging with it every day? It's becoming part of your workflow. You probably have a paid subscription to ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini. And then the third stage is that optimizing stage, where it's not just something you do, but it's a part of how you do what you do.
It's a really nice way to really frame it and categorize it in terms of meeting people where they are. And no doubt everybody, everyone I talk to, it falls into one of those. So you mentioned mindset, right? So let's talk about that, because I think it really is a shift, especially, talk about the people that bash it because they don't understand it. Of course, any of us come across those people as well. And then all of a sudden they get a taste of it and sort of understand what it's good at least for them initially. And it just evolves from there. But in terms of taking that mindset shift, from just drafting an email or something like that, just doing small little things as a tool, but going and turning AI into your strategic partner. How does that work?
Yeah, right. It is a transition in your mindset. But, when you talk about mindset in any kind of context, the first thing you have to do is think about your thinking, right? And again, as lawyers, we don't often do that because we're just so busy day to day. We're in the weeds, man. We're trying to get the work done. We've got maybe hours that we've got to bill. We've got the phone ringing, clients calling. We got a ton of work to do. We got deadlines, all the legal stuff. We're in the weeds, right? Just the whirlwind of the daily grind of being a lawyer. But you got to really step back and think about your thinking and how you're going to apply these new tools to the work that you do every day. So that's where that mind shift starts to happen, is you start thinking about, well, how can these tools not just help me write an email, but how can they help me look at my financials? How can they help me train my team? How can they help my team help our clients more efficiently? How can we deliver legal services faster, more efficiently, and at a higher profit margin, really. So you just have to start thinking about how you're going to implement AI in more strategic ways. It kind of came about for me also just recently, kind of reaffirmed this. I was reading this Thomson Reuters report on, I think it's called, I got a note here, I took a note, Future of Professionals Report 2025. And they surveyed a bunch of organizations. Basically, the point of the report is organizations that actually have a visible AI strategy And visible AI strategy is important, right? A lot of firms are kind of dabbling with AI, but they don't actually have a visible AI strategy that every person in the firm knows what the strategy is and they're part of that strategy.
So when you say visible,
yeah.
what does that mean? Everybody in the firm can see that it's, this is part of the mindset shift, that it's an important factor in the work that they do and ways that they can implement it. Can you just talk more about that visibility, whether that's internal
I think
or external?
that's an important, absolutely, Jason. That's an important point of it, right? Is that what makes it visible? Well, it starts with the leadership. The leadership has to set the example. So the leaders of the firm or the organization have to be using AI, and they have to be excited about implementing AI. And again, not just for writing emails, but for all facets of their work, everything that they do. And not just the work and the workflows and operations, but using it as a strategic partner. So that's part of it. So the team all knows that there is an AI strategy. So for that, you got to have training. You got to have opportunities for the team to be trained and learn how to use AI. You got to have policies around their AI use. So does the team and your staff understand when to use AI, what to use it for, when not to use it? Are they comfortable and familiar with any guardrails that your firm has to put in place? Obviously with confidentiality. There are still issues with hallucinations that happen. So you've got to have some guardrails around it. But it's also something like anything else. That's something you got to talk about in your firm. So are you discussing AI use in your firm meetings? Are you training the team about how they can use AI? And maybe even just opening up, which is something that we're starting to do, is have a meeting where we just talk about AI best practices or use cases. How did you use AI this week? What did you think about, what kind of new way did you use AI this week that you can share with everybody else?
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. I've even thought, it might even be great where you're just having meetings just to talk about AI implementation and various use cases, because it's just like anything else. People are going to discover things on their own and to share it, right, throughout the organization. I've even thought, it could be a good idea to just, if not on a weekly basis, maybe on a monthly basis, just have like an AI consultant, somebody that understands AI, at the highest level in your particular, whether it's, obviously your sector, but maybe a particular practice area, and share that with the team. Like, have you tried this or that? And then determining, okay, of all of these things, which are approved uses. Because the thing I wonder sometimes is, again, when you talk about big picture, what does it really mean to be an AI law firm? It's like at an individual level, like a work product level, just even as a manager, an owner, founder, like how do you know like what part of the work product is generated by AI and which isn't? And maybe it doesn't matter, but I bring it up in the sense that like the stuff that's been generated by AI could potentially be wrong in some instances. And so what's the process of reviewing what AI spits out or incorporating it into your workflow? I don't know. Again, I use it very heavily, but I'm also very, in terms of what I use it for externally, I'm very careful about reviewing that stuff. And that's today, because the reality is, whatever hallucinations and problems that exist now, I tell you, for the people that want to bash it, like, those aren't going to be forever. I often think when we think about AI today, think of it in the context of like the telephone, right? From like, early telephone to whatever, iPhone 17 and what that thing can do versus the rotary phone. I'm like, I think we're basically at the rotary phone stage of AI today. And we're probably, 5-10 years from like stuff that, like the rotary phone, you couldn't envision what you could do on an iPhone, right? Like not even remotely. Anyway, so back to being an AI law firm, what are some of the, I guess, core characteristics that you would see for a firm that strives to be truly, an AI-driven law firm?
Well, I think there are a few things I recommend, even for just the lawyers or the owners of the firm or partners of the firm, that they should, start using AI themselves, really just more frequently using AI. So a couple tips that I give people to use AI more frequently and really on a daily basis, you should be using AI, is one very, very simple tip. And this is probably more for those of attorneys out there that are listening to us that are in that exploring stage. They're dabbling with AI and they're just not using it a lot. One of the reasons they don't use it more is it's not top of mind awareness for them. They're just not thinking about using these tools. So I always, going back a year and a half ago, had ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini or whichever tool you like to use, have it up in your browser, in one of your tabs of your browser, so it's always open. And one of my favorite kind of ways I look at this, and I've been using this phrase for a while, but I have a mindset that if it takes more than 30 seconds to write it, I let AI write it for me. And I had a conversation with an attorney recently. He was like, well, I'm a great writer and I love to write, so I prefer to do the writing myself. And he said, I understand it saves time, but I like to do the writing. And I get that. And if you as a lawyer love writing, then keep writing if that's why you love being a lawyer. But think about it this way. AI can spit out a result a lot faster than I can type. My typing, the older I get, Jason, is terrible. I got nothing but typos. And to be honest with you, when I'm typing really fast, my grammar may not be all that, up to speed either. So AI is going to write it faster. It's not going to have any typos, and the grammar is going to be perfect. So if it takes more than 30 seconds to write it, I let AI write it for me. And another tip, which I'm trying to get more in the habit of doing myself, and a lot of this stuff really is as simple, Jason, as just habits. And as lawyers, we just get in the habit of doing things the way we've done them because that's the way we've always done it. So this AI stuff is very new to us. So it's just really establishing new habits. But one that I'm working on now is using voice commands and dictating. It's kind of funny, when I was coming up as a lawyer, I've been a lawyer for 30 years, like you mentioned. Back 30 years ago, that was still something the older attorneys were doing, right? Dictating to their legal assistant all the time. And then we kind of got with, computers and using our phones and everything else. Lawyers started really doing more of their own writing and less dictating. And now we're kind of getting back to dictating is a really good skill to have with AI because you can speed up the flow of your work tremendously just by using voice to text instead of just typing in a prompt. So those are a couple things. And one more tip that I like to remind people of is this idea, especially with hallucinations, because people get concerned about that. And that is I call it 10-80-10 rule. I've seen some other folks talk about this online, but the first 10% is your input of the prompt, right? 80% is what AI does, and then the last 10% is human in the loop checking the work to make sure it's right. And that's really, really key with your staff. When you start training staff, I think the biggest thing you got to watch out for is staff using AI to do their work without proofreading it, without checking it, and then they go ahead and file something or send something, and that's where they're going to find mistakes. That's not AI's fault. That's your staff's fault, and really your fault if you haven't trained them to do better.
Yeah, so you brought up the 10-80-10 in terms of using it in AI, but the place that I'm familiar with it is training your team and having a team member, and you give them the 10% of direction, you let them do 80% of the work, and then you review it for the 10%, until you're at a point that, you can basically have them do all of it or those percentages change a little bit. So, and I kind of look at a tool like AI, like for me, when I started using AI, instead of artificial intelligence, I treated it like my assistant. So it was kind of like assistant intelligence. Like, I don't know, I need some information here, go dig it up and find it for me. And I'd review it or give me an outline for something, or I've written something, give me an edit on this or make some suggestions. So you mentioned a couple of things. I want, in terms of talking about incorporating AI into the firm's daily operations, I want to talk really about the practical side, about how they can start weaving AI into that. And you've mentioned a couple, but let's start with what you think are some of the absolute easiest entry points for firms, and ones that'll kind of give quick wins. Even to those skeptics, they'll see very quickly that it's a very helpful tool, and then they can start to, and also remind me of what the 3 stages were again.
Yeah. So exploring, engaging, and optimizing.
Got it.
Yeah.
So maybe we can use it in that framework, or at least just start. Yeah. What are some of the entry points?
Yeah. Well, let me give you an example. So even kind of my journey from exploring to engaging is I'm kind of somewhere between engaging and optimizing, and depending on the task, I'm kind of back and forth, right? But exploring to engaging. When I first started, I loved ChatGPT. I still love ChatGPT. But for client confidential matters and that kind of stuff, I was very careful not to put any kind of client information into ChatGPT. So it was more of kind of giving it a scenario of I wanted it to draft a motion or draft a letter or do some type of written work for me. And I would have to give it sort of, use John Doe as the name and here are sort of the generic facts. And so it's a lot of copying and pasting, right? That's kind of the first kind of entry point for me, was a lot of copying and pasting. But then what we did was we moved because we're a Microsoft Office environment kind of law firm. And so every law firm is going to be different in that respect. So this won't apply to you if you're not a Microsoft Office. And some people are good with that and some people aren't. But we put all of our client documents into OneDrive because we know OneDrive is secure. We've got all the adequate protection and security that we need. That's where we store our client documents. So then when you upgrade your license to include Copilot, that then gives your AI the ability to look at all of those documents in your client files, and then it can start giving you information because it's pulling data out of those client files. So that's a big step, I think, for law firms, is going from having your data separated or siloed from the AI tool you're using. And then when you can kind of merge those so the AI tool actually has access to your client documents and information and all your data, that then takes you to another level. So before, like for a medical summary, not using clients' personal identifiable information, but maybe taking a doctor's report I got and copying and pasting some language into ChatGPT and saying, summarize this for me for a letter to the insurance adjuster. Now I don't have to do that back and forth. I just go into the client's file, click the file, then ask Copilot, hey, write a summary, write a letter, do whatever it is I'm asking it to do.
All right,
Make sense?
Todd, I have to follow this up because I imagine somebody's listening to this and their mind is getting scrambled. Like, what about, as lawyers have been hearing for years, privacy of data, data security? This was a big thing, obviously, with, moving document management from private servers in people's office into the cloud, concerns about security there, and confidentiality with client information and data. Talk about that. I mean, is there, I mean, there's got to be something to be worried about there, but it sounds like it's very manageable.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned, I'm glad you did it, cloud computing, right? So I remember before the cloud was a thing, when we all had paper files, right? And we started putting documents into the cloud and then really into like case management systems or document management systems that were on the cloud online. And I heard from all kinds of attorneys, oh, that's not secure, that's not safe. Yeah. How do you know your client documents aren't going to get hacked? And now show me a law firm that doesn't have their documents in the cloud in some form or fashion. The old days when everybody had their own server in the back room, and now everybody's gotten away from servers and everything's on the cloud. Everybody, not everybody, but most of us are now satisfied with the level of security that the cloud provides. So that's kind of my analogy between, we didn't think the cloud was secure, but now everybody's on the cloud. I promise you, if you think AI is not secure, a year from now, 2 years from now, you're not going to feel the same way.
Yeah, but I imagine you also have, as lawyers moved into the cloud, it's just baked in your business insurance policy that, there is some component for data protection as well. So I think that's another way to just protect yourself. Obviously, you can't act, in some irresponsible way, but it seems like this is an issue that, it's always going to be one, yes. but largely it can be put to bed. There's ways of managing that risk and those concerns. So, all right. So,
and there are always risks. You're right. There are always risks. But, and as lawyers in whatever state you're in, I'm sure your state bar has some ethical opinion. A lot of them do now about just in general using technology that says it's your obligation as the lawyer to make sure whatever technology tool you're using, that it meets the minimum required confidentiality standards for your state bar. So with any AI tool, whatever you're going to do, that's why, obviously if it's free, that's not going to be secure. So you can't put client data or information in a free AI tool. If you have a paid version, you're going to get a little higher level of security, but you still have to check and make sure that your data is going to be protected. And unless you have enterprise level security and you start looking at specifically terms of service, do they train Does the model train on the data you're saving or sharing with that AI tool? Where do they keep the information? There's all those things that we know about. Same thing like looking at a cloud provider. You just got to do some basic due diligence to make sure that it's protected, right?
Yeah, but I was going to say, you mentioned like terms of service, which, by the way, great thing for AI. Pull out that document in a PDF, drop it into ChatGPT and ask it, what does this terms of service say? Are there any holes? Are there any things I should be worried about? Like, I use that for every insurance policy I have now, whether it's a home, car, business. It's just, health. It just, I thick policy of, terms, conditions, and basically all the ways they're not going to cover you. Very easy to figure out quickly using AI. But so, all right, anyway, we're talking about figuring out ways to incorporate AI into the operation. So what, because I want to do it, maybe talk about from a lawyer standpoint, kind of from a legal process, and then we'll get into training your team and how to get your team involved in it so you really can reach that AI law firm designation as you will. So, So what are some other ways that you're using it in the practice of law?
Yeah, so, let me kind of give you just generally a tip on how I would recommend that most lawyers start finding other uses for AI that you haven't thought about before. A lot of this, it just comes down to your creativity, and a lot of lawyers I know are very, very creative thinkers. We're very analytical, but we can also be very creative. But the easiest way to get started with this, Jason, is look at pain points in your process or friction that you come across in your daily workflow. When you keep running into a problem or there's some friction caused by some process or something that keeps happening in your firm, that's the very first place I would look to see if there's an AI tool that can help us get over this problem or this friction. So that's number one. Number two, look at something that's taking you a lot of time, but it's repeatable. It's a process that you do over and over and over and over again, but it takes you a lot of time to do it. That's a great place to look for an AI tool or even an automation tool. And those are different things, AI and automation. We probably won't get into that today, but that's kind of, I think, when we talk about agentic AI and agents, that's the next step. We're not there, so I don't even want to get into that with lawyers today because lawyers are going to freak out when there's all these AI agents running around on their behalf doing work for their firm, right? So let's not go there yet.
I keep wondering, it's like when my AI agent's talking to somebody else's AI agent and trying to work something out and coming back, all right, here's what we AI agents negotiated on our respective behalves.
Listen, I love that, Jason. I do personal injury cases, so I'm like predicting the day where my AI negotiating agent is going to be talking to the insurance company's AI negotiating agent, and the two agents are going to sort it out and figure out what the value of the case is. That's probably what's going to happen one day. I'm kind of being facetious, but maybe not. It might come to that. We'll see.
But in that vein, right, because I start to wonder, what jobs, this is what I think all of us ultimately wonder, what jobs and roles are ultimately going to be consumed by AI simply because they're better at doing it. In the personal injury space, you wonder, and I think we had a private conversation not long ago about that. Like I recently just used AI to draft like a demand letter for something just to see what it could come up with, and it was pretty impressive. And I ran it by an attorney, and they said, "Do not send that. That is so over the top." But in any case, but there is a scenario where their AI today and certainly in the future can outperform humans in certain roles. Have you found any tasks within the firm that you said, like repeatable, maybe they're lower value, things like that you can use technology, you can use AI to help you solve those things in a way more time efficient way?
Yeah, I know for me, a big one is even in doing legal research. So I'll just give you a couple more kind of, use examples, I guess. So research, if you've got a topic you're trying to figure out and you've got 10 or 15 cases about that topic, but you don't have time to read all 15 cases, I start with AI or ChatGPT or whatever tool I'm using, and I'll ask it to summarize those cases. One of my favorite tools right now is NotebookLM from Google. That's a closed loop AI tool where it only looks at the sources you give it. So that's a great way to create even like a study guide if there's a legal issue you're working on. Put the case law in a Google notebook, put any treatise material you have or articles about that topic, put it in the notebook, and then you've got this great kind of closed loop source of information. Then you can ask the chatbot basic questions about that. It's got some great features that will create a video overview. So it creates this just very, very cool visual presentation about whatever the source material is. And it's got this audio overview feature I love, which is it creates a podcast. I'm not kidding, Jason. It's going to put all of us out of business that ever wanted to have a podcast, because it's two perfectly natural sounding voices having a podcast about whatever the source material is. But that's a good example of something that was a big, takes a lot of time reading through cases, especially the cases that aren't directly on point. So getting back to that use case, have the AI review the cases. Here's my issue. Give me the 3 or 4 cases that are most on point and cite to the place in the case citation where it references this particular issue. And it just makes your research, accelerates it, makes it that much faster. Medical records is another one. Whether that's summarizing medical records, understanding medical terminology, or help me describe this medical procedure to a jury. It just helps with so many different things like that. A big one in our firm too that I would encourage all firms, if you are on Teams or if you do use Zoom for your internal meetings, use the AI companion tools that come with that. So for example, after our Monday morning meeting, we run the Copilot report and it tells us, here's your action items from the meeting you just had. So that weekly meeting, we leave and everybody's got a written plan of here's what we need to work on this week, because it's so good at doing the transcript and then summarizing the meeting and pulling out all the action items from the meeting. Those are just a couple of examples.
Yeah, that is a great one, right? And I would say where would you put that? At the exploring or maybe even the engaging stage? Because like you can take a Zoom call or whatever type of call you have and get a really nice transcript, and then you get a summary of the transcript. But I even took a call recently, and I was just, I take notes, while I'm talking, in my Google Doc. But, it's a complete disaster. But after the call, I just dropped it in there. I said, can you just clean this up and give me a nice organized thing that I can put, in my document? And it just does that in such a seamless, amazing way.
Yep. It's really good for that. So I think here's, maybe with is it at the engaging level or the optimizing level? One way to go from maybe engaging to optimizing is what we're going to try to do with this history of all of these meetings on Teams now that we have, every single week we have a Monday meeting, is to look for trends and to ask AI to help us see the trends in our firm of things that maybe we're not getting done fast enough. Or are there common tasks we're always getting stuck or have a roadblock on? Or that might even identify a particular, if you have a big firm, it might identify a department that's not doing what they're supposed to, or a particular employee that is always the one that's behind on getting work done. I just think it's going to be able to look at, if you had a team meeting 6 months ago, you don't remember what you discussed at the Monday morning meeting 6 months ago, but your AI remembers every meeting you've ever had.
So you can go back and just query the AI. What did we talk about, 6 months ago or whenever it was on this particular topic? And it could probably come back and give you, on this date, this is what you discussed on that topic and so on. Give you a quick summary of where you are. I mean, how powerful is that? Just that alone, right? To be able to consolidate all of your meeting information that you can now query it so you can actually find out what the hell you actually talked about,
Absolutely. And I think that's a big mindset shift too. And that's kind of why we're here talking about this today, is if you're a lawyer right now that thinks, okay, AI is helping me write a social media post or helping me write an email, think about all of the data in your firm, your client documents, your standard operating procedures, your meetings with your team, how you do what you do, all of that data. And now you've got a way to organize it, and an AI tool that can help pull and extract information out of all of that data. That is the next level. That's how you use AI to optimize your firm, your operations. And at the end of the day, hopefully you're going to make more money. And most importantly, you're going to get better service to your clients.
Let's just sort of dig into that just a little bit from a practical sense. When you have all this, your firm's, your whole organizational data, all the different things you just mentioned, how do you do that? Just generally, but where's the repository? Are we talking about using NotebookLM by Google? Yeah. Is there other tools? Some integration with ChatGPT? Where do you store all that info? How does it access it? And sort of what is your touch point in terms of actually, accessing all that data at your fingertips?
Yeah. So that's been a big kind of just a logistical challenge that we've been working on is migrating all of our documents and information over to OneDrive and SharePoint, setting up SharePoint sites for all of our documents. We had another cloud provider where most of our documents were, and so we realized, well, if we want Copilot to have access to all this data, we got to move the data over to SharePoint, right?
Oh.
Which there's a whole learning curve there. Don't get me started on OneDrive and SharePoint and Teams and how it all fits together. But anybody out there that's a Microsoft Office knows how frustrating.
You'll put that in your book. We'll announce your book at the end of this and get people.
Yeah. We're gonna put that. That's a whole chapter or two in the book for sure. But yeah, so you got to get the data in a place where you have an AI tool that can extract the information. So here's another thing I think, Jason, kind of between this engaging level and this optimizing level, engaging level, which is where I think I'm pretty consistently right now, is where I'm paying for upgraded licenses for all the team to have Copilot, for example, right? And then we've got my case manager who uses ChatGPT. We may have a paid subscription to ChatGPT for her. So you're just kind of starting to get the licenses that you need. You're paying for your team to use, a more secure version of ChatGPT or Copilot in Microsoft Office, right? The next step of optimizing is where you start looking at all those vendors that are out there. Now, if we can talk about that for a minute, which is interesting, without naming names, there's a ton, obviously, right, Jason? You know about all these vendors that are coming out of the woodwork that have really, really cool AI products. And they are charging a premium for those products. And as a lawyer, especially if you're at the exploring stage and you see a demo of one of these amazing AI vendors, it's magic, you're blown away, and you have to make that decision because I think there's either time or money, right? Like most things are, especially marketing and sometimes even technology. Copilot and even ChatGPT, you can kind of build more of these systems kind of yourself, like learning how to do better prompting. You can get better results with better prompts, right? So, but that takes time to teach staff, to build up a prompt library, to have processes around what kind of prompts you use to get the most out of the AI tool you're using. Whereas the vendors, that's really what they're doing. They may be even just using a wrapper around ChatGPT, but the interface, right, is built out in a way that is so intuitive for the attorney to figure out how to use it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to ask you in terms of these different tools, right? I imagine the backbone of these tools is one of, the core, large language models, whether it be ChatGPT or Perplexity or, one of the other ones. And then they, build all the tools on top of that, which can be good because it sounds like what that'll do is that'll take you very quickly from exploring to optimizing. You can almost skip the engaging, but I would also, the thing that I think is important here, and you can speak to this, but I do think it's important as you adopt the technology, you're growing with it, right? To some degree. So you're actually learning some of the moving parts here and how to use them, because I think that'll serve you, especially if you're a younger attorney in an early stage of your career, it'll serve you longer over time because you're going to grow with it. You're going to have an understanding with it. It's not going to be like you hit a thing and you're just using the tech that from whenever you kind of stop the learning phase. All right. Yeah. So anyway, but we're talking about training your team so the entire firm is using the AI, right? Not just the lawyer. So go into that a little bit more and talk about some of the ways that, you train your non-lawyer staff, just so they can feel confident using the AI, right? You started by, great, we're going to get you the license so you have the better versions. They're more secure. What's next?
Yeah. So then you have to start, and I think, this is really, to me, opens up this is really the key to becoming an AI firm is empowering your team to use AI. Because think about it, for most lawyers, even if we're using AI, a lot of the inefficiencies in your firm, a lot of times they are with us, the lawyers. We sometimes are the bottleneck, I have to admit. But it's stuff your staff is doing and you don't even know that they're doing it. You don't really have an understanding or appreciation of the day-to-day work that they do, right? A lot of lawyers or partners in a firm don't really know what that legal assistant is doing on a daily basis.
That's any business. That's any business, right? Any employee, you think you know what people are doing and you maybe understand part of it, but yeah, unless you actually spend time really understanding what their role is and how they do it on a day-to-day basis, you probably don't know like half of it at least.
You don't know. You don't know. I read an article that I cite in the presentation that I do that said 2/3 of business leaders expect their staff to use AI, but they do virtually no training of staff on using AI. So a lot of business owners and even lawyers, I'm sure, just think, oh, well, my team's using it, I guess. They don't really know, because you got to be very intentional.
Just issue a mandate. We've got you the license. Start using
Use
this.
AI.
Figure it out. So, but how do you do it? Okay, so that's the wrong way to do it. Clearly, like being intentional about it, the way you described. Like, how do you do it in terms of getting your staff trained up, explaining to them like here are the use cases, and then also maybe they come to you because you have these weekly meetings and say, here's a way that I think we could use it, or I've tried it. What do you think? And then you start to create formal policies or playbooks, for the different components of your team and actually utilizing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would recommend that either incorporating, depending on how much time you want to invest in this, either weekly or at least monthly, a meeting devoted to AI best practices with all the staff. And not just you as the owner or lawyer telling the staff what to do, but listen to the staff. So going back to what I was talking about, identifying the work that your staff does. So we, in those meetings, and even in like a daily huddle, and I hope everybody out there, if you have a team, that you're doing some form of a daily huddle or a quick stand-up meeting or some type of review with your team at least once a day, if not twice a day. So in those huddles, we will also say, hey, what are you working on right now? What did you do today? And when they give me a response, I will ask, did you use AI? Because I'm trying to remind them and hold them accountable for, hey, if you did it yourself and it took you a half an hour, could AI have done it with you and it would take you 10 minutes? So, and think about that for your team. The math really is easy. If you know what you're paying your team an hour, if you can save them an hour a day in work, you're going to get an hour more productivity out of them. That's huge. That's a big, big difference to your bottom line.
It's probably a lot more than that.
And a lot more than that. That report I mentioned said it was something like 4 hours, I think 4 hours a week you could reclaim from one particular team member using AI. So that's huge. That's a big number at the end of the year. So you got to be having conversations. It really kind of comes back to what I would say are best practices for being a good leader, which is listening to your people and listening and having a conversation with them about how are they using AI, and really more importantly, how are they not using it, so that you can intervene and say, wait a minute, what if you would have used AI for this, it might have, wouldn't have taken as long. And they may say, well, I have no idea how to do that. And then we have a conversation around how to do it.
And one of the things that I think firms can really leverage, if you have younger team members, no shocker, throughout all of history, younger people better with the newest technology than the older generation. They are probably going to find ways of doing things way easier, way smarter using AI than any of us older members of the team might even think of, right? So I think that's an opportunity that firms can probably leverage. Have you come across any team members that maybe are resistant or skeptical, and how do you overcome that type of resistance?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that most people out there are going to have when they start trying to get their team to implement this is, you mentioned younger employees. When you have older employees, they're going to be a lot less willing and interested to jump into this AI thing. So they're going to need a little more probably hand-holding, a little more attention, maybe to help educate them and just get them comfortable, right? Because they're going to have a certain level of fear about this, which is typical of most technology stuff, right? That folks that aren't experienced with the technology, they kind of get nervous or fearful of the technology. So you got to kind of create an environment where it's a learning environment, where there's an openness about it. That don't feel bad if you don't get it. Don't feel bad if you don't understand. Don't feel bad if you made a mistake. That means you can't yell at them and scream at them because they gave you some ChatGPT thing that was absolutely wrong. You have to give them some leeway and some freedom to learn. That's what learning takes, right? Is that kind of freedom and space to learn new things. So that's maybe a tip I would give for older employees. But getting everyone on board, you got to have some standard operating procedures around that. You need to kind of have very clearly defined policies about what you will or won't use AI to do, especially around things like confidentiality of what information you can use in the AI, what information you can't, especially if you're still at that kind of exploring stage and you may not have a completely confidentially secure system yet. Well, then your team needs to make sure that they know they can't just go put social security numbers into ChatGPT, right?
Yeah,
And
no
then I
doubt.
would also, yeah, everybody ask your team to start working on their own prompt library. So when they get a great response and they used a great prompt, maybe share it. Maybe send an email out to the rest of the team. Hey guys, I just did this great prompt and got this great result. And let's kind of start collecting those as a firm so that we can have kind of our best prompts saved in one central location that everybody has access to. Here's the biggest challenge though with,
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the prompt thing because I read something recently, Ernie Svensson, Ernie the attorney who you know, and he was talking about essentially systemizing your practice around prompts that the people, and I may butcher this a little bit, but in a given role, just know that these are the prompts to do the certain tasks, and that can get like a massive amount of work done if you've got the right prompts. I've got to get him on to talk about it, but you touched on it. I thought it came up in my mind that I read that, I don't know, a few weeks ago. And I thought that's a really interesting angle on just get the prompts right and everything will flow from there.
invite me back to be on that conversation with, because I want to hear what Ernie has to say, because he's awesome, man. So here's what I love about that idea. So you can take, and I've been thinking about this lately, is trying to figure out a way to structure all of this new stuff, right? But if you know, and a lot of firms have an SOP or a standard operating procedure for whatever procedures and things they have their team doing, right? If you do, that's great. If you don't, use AI to start writing those standard operating procedures. Quick tip there, use Loom or Zoom, do a screen recording of you showing how to do something, take the transcript, put it into AI, ask it to write the standard operating procedure, then take the standard operating procedure, put it in Google NotebookLM, and create a podcast about it. And that's a great way to teach and train your team about different SOPs, right?
That's incredible. You have like your own internal podcast that NotebookLM is able to create based on your internal documentation and data. Is that accurate to say?
Literally. You create a podcast and it takes Google NotebookLM 2 minutes to create a podcast about whatever the topic is. You just have to create it. And then you download that to your knowledge base or wherever you have all those training materials. And now you've got a training video from your original screen recording you did. Then you've got the transcript, not just the transcript, you have the written SOP that came from the transcript. And then third, you've got either the video overview or the podcast about that particular topic. So there's your whole training thing is built out, and that only takes you as long really as it takes to record the screen recording, plus maybe 10 minutes to do the other stuff for an SOP. So anyway.
But that's amazing, though, because that is a challenge for any business, any law firm, is just systemizing your practice, systematizing all the different roles when you're thinking. That's a huge challenge, and it's a particularly important one, especially for the firm leaders or the founders or the owners to start to be able to have that business or that firm operate independently of them. Now there's systems, people run the systems, and so forth, but that's an amazingly easy way to do it versus whatever it was before, like sit down and really think of every step and try to write it down and train somebody on it and do that in a repeatable way.
Absolutely. So that's just an example, again, of how, AI just makes this stuff so easy. So now that you've got those SOPs, back to Ernie's suggestion, which I love, is based on those standard operating procedures and processes in your firm of how you do the work that you do, you could probably, for a team member, maybe identify 20 different things they do during the week. Well, for each of those tasks, build out really good prompts around that task. And then, as you said, you've got this, not just a prompt library, but kind of this prompt process of here's the prompt to do this, here's the prompt to do this, here's the prompt to do this. And then it's just repeatable. And then you just improve on it and make it better. The biggest challenge I think that all of us are going to have, number one, starts with us as the leader, that we're using this stuff and we're implementing these tools and we're setting the example. The second biggest challenge is that staff are busy and they just want to keep their head down and get their work done. So you got to teach them to stop and take a second and think about whatever they're doing and how could AI help them do it better and faster. And that's going to be the key.
Yeah, because I think anytime you're asking your staff to do more and to learn a new technology, whether that's AI or anything else, is an additional load on what they're already trying to do. And you have to really demonstrate the value of, if they learn it, how it will help their actual day-to-day workload, work life better. Because, that's something all of us business, here, go learn this tool. Well, their days are full, as you're saying, and now they've got some other thing they've got to learn, figure out how to incorporate it. It's, that's not as easy and as seamless as possible. But if you can demonstrate it'll be worth their time, you can at least help motivate them to want to do it and then realize the benefit.
And I know I've experienced this, and I've heard of other people experiencing it. And I think you were talking, I don't know if it's before we started or on our conversation, about how, if you're using AI every day, you really do start to rely on it. That may be a negative thing. I've seen some studies about, MIT did a study. It was kind of, some people criticized it. It wasn't a great study, but basically they had a couple control groups, and then the group that was using ChatGPT to write a paper on something, by the end of it, they had no idea what they were writing the paper about. They were just copying and pasting, versus the group that just used their brain and what they could remember about a topic. So there is something to be said about one of the downsides of AI, I think, is probably over-reliance on AI. But short of that, there is kind of, for me at least, there was an excitement about it, that it started making a lot of my work more fun and easier. And I'll tell you, if anybody out there or on your team is a procrastinator, it's the best tool for procrastinators, because the problem procrastinator has is what, Jason? Getting started. And so ChatGPT will help you get started in any project that you're procrastinating on.
Right. Even if you have something you have to write and you're staring at the blank page, boom, just give me some ideas, give me an outline, give me topics, whatever it is. And then you're off to the races, and you can obviously dig in further on all of those. But all right, let's talk about, where's it going? What's the future of AI look like, specifically, for law firms, since that's what we're talking about. Like which roles do you think AI will transform the most within firms? You mentioned older, I think, older team members, typically higher paid, resistant to AI, so less productive. I feel like, sadly, those are the people that probably should be really leaning as heavily into AI as possible to optimize their workflows. But from your perspective, where's AI going to have the greatest transformation, in the coming at least couple of years?
I mean, I think on the staffing and workforce issues, I think those are real. And I think we're starting to see some of that just across all industries. We keep seeing in the news information coming out about entry-level white-collar jobs are kind of going away. And,
get your plumber license or something, that's
man.
not one of the only jobs that's going to be safe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Something that requires a human, two hands to do the work is a good, safe job for the future for a while, I think. But yeah, these entry-level jobs are a problem. I think in law firms, what you're going to have is you're not going to need as many legal assistants, right? If you have just an entry-level legal assistant that just drafts things, letters, does those kind of things, kind of drafting basic stuff, gathering information, whatever it is. Intake. Think about the old intake process, right, Jason? Which I know there's still the benefit of a human being involved in intake, and I think most firms will continue to have a human in the loop on intake in some form or fashion. But you really could have an AI telephone agent now pretty much do an intake for you, and that's another example of. Right now, it's not acceptable, right? And I had this conversation with someone this morning about how important it still was to have a human being doing the marketing, is the context of this conversation I had. But we said the same thing about, ATMs, right? Or bank tellers, that I still, people say, I want to go to the bank. Well, no, nobody wants to go to the bank. You do it all on a mobile app, right?
Can't
but
even find a bank to go to half the time.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, groceries, even with self-checkout at the grocery store, now that's something everybody, a lot of people like self-checkout, or they just don't go to the grocery store. They have their groceries brought to them. So a lot of these kind of old ideas we've clung to for so long, they're going to go away because that's just the way progress in technology moves and things change. So what else is going to happen? I don't know. It's interesting. It makes it really hard to kind of plan for the future. Even I talked about, well, like selecting vendors. A product a vendor offers you today, and if they want you to sign a year contract, I mean, in 6 months, this stuff may be totally different, right? What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think of it in the context of like my world and the marketing world. I hear, people talking about, the agency world. And what I hear people saying a lot of, which I completely disagree with, is that, AI is here, it's coming. The most valuable thing an agency can provide is strategy. All the actual work is highly commoditized. And I think it's the opposite. I'm like, I could go into ChatGPT and get a very detailed strategy that's sound very quickly. I don't need somebody with, 20 years of experience, because ChatGPT has, theoretically all of human knowledge experience it's drawing upon. It's the actual execution of the individual tactics that I think has the real value, because that's the case with anything. Greatest strategy, right? And, you need to be able to execute on that strategy and deliver the results that strategy envisions. So I honestly, I don't know, like it's hard to know where things are going, but I'm obviously very much on board with like, hey, let's just get on this AI train and ride it and figure out how to at least optimize the work that we're doing and deliver, either more value for the same price or the same value for lower cost. But what I wonder, and my question to you, Todd, is like for the firms that resist currently AI,
Ooh, yeah.
what's at stake for them? What's really at stake here? And let's just say in the personal injury space, since that's where you operate.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can tell you, I'm a small firm, so I'm competing against, and I'm in Orlando, which is ground zero for advertising personal injury firms, right? So just to be competitive over the years, that's why I've always been interested in technology and learning about technology, which is that I have to do things efficiently. I have to speed up, time on desk. I have to keep my cases moving quickly through the pipeline. Not only financially, that's good for the firm, but it's also a good way for me to have happy, satisfied clients that refer me to other people, is that we were very efficient in trying to get their case resolved as quickly as possible. So I've always thought technology can help, just makes your firm better in the way you practice law better. I think, so we've all heard the phrase, AI is not going to replace the lawyer, but a lawyer using AI will replace the one who's not using AI. I mean, I think there is definitely some truth in that, because if you're not using these tools in the future, I mean, listen, in another year or two, AI is going to be ubiquitous. It's going to be part of everything. We may not even refer to it as AI anymore. It may just be built into every case management system, built into email, built into every interaction we have with technology, and you don't think of it as AI. It's just built in. It's just there doing what it does.
It's just going to be the prevailing technology of the day, right? Technology's always had little buzzwords, throughout, but ultimately it's just the technology, and that's just like you're saying, it's just going to be baked in as with everything that we do.
When the internet came around, the internet was a miracle, but we all thought, wow, I'm on the internet. This thing is amazing. And now it's just the internet. So, AI is going to be the same thing. It's this crazy magical tool right now, but in a short time, a year or two probably, it's just going to be built into everything, and you won't even think about it as this separate special thing. But firms in other practice areas, I think they've got to really take a look at a couple things. If you're a transactional firm, if you have been selling documents and that's your business model, you're going to have to come up with something different. So that means you've got to be a trusted advisor and an expert on whatever it is, the service that you offer. And you've got to really lean into those advisory services that you offer, because selling the document,
add, right? If you, like I said, I can go now get a demand letter written. It's not going to be perfect, but the value add is you have an attorney review it. And like I said, in my case, that's way over the top, right?
Yep.
Scale it back in this particular instance. You can go to that later if you don't get what you're after. But, just knowing maybe timing where, ChatGPT or these tools aren't quite there yet.
Yep. But in personal injury, clients are, before they call an attorney to come see me to help them with their case, they're going to try to do their own demand letter, and ChatGPT or some vendor or product that does this is going to walk them through the steps of their personal injury case, how they can handle it pro se and not even call me. So I think it's going to affect all practice areas because if you're a consumer-facing practice area especially. The other one I was going to mention, though, is hourly billing. If you bill hourly, I mean, the Florida bar, I don't know about your state where you're located, if you're listening to this out there, but in the Florida bar has already started to talk about lawyers have to bill their time based on the time they actually spent working on the matter. So if you used to have this library of documents and you'd say, well, I bill a half an hour for that document, but it takes 5 seconds to generate that document with AI, are you still going to be able to bill that half an hour for the document or the letter? So firms that are really heavily based on hourly billing, they're going to start having to think creatively about how they can maybe transition to some type of tier billing or flat fee plus hourly. There's going to have to be a creative way to get around it. But what used to take you a certain number of hours to do is going to take you minutes to do going forward.
Yeah, that's interesting, and it's good to hear that the bar associations are catching up with that relatively quickly. Yeah, to say like, yeah, you used to write this document, it would take you an hour. Now you can write it in 5 seconds. You can't bill an hour for that document anymore, right? Because that's theoretically not ethical to do that. So, okay, so let's I want to start wrapping up a little bit here. So for attorneys listening now, really just to hit on a couple of what first steps they can start to take to moving in the direction of becoming that, AI law firm. So if an attorney listening there, they only have a couple hours a week just to be in the experimental stage, what do they focus on first?
Yeah, so if you're an attorney out there and you haven't even looked at AI or you've never even done a single prompt in AI, I did a presentation not too long ago and still a few hands went up in the room of attorneys that have not done a single AI prompt or used it at all. If you're one of those folks, just try any one of these products that are out there. There's several of them. Just Google AI tools available and pick one. But ChatGPT,
just go to ChatGPT and who uses
it's
Google
right there. Right. Yeah, it's very easy to find these tools, right? But pick one and start playing around with it so you can at least see how it works. Now, if you're in that explorer stage, so you're already done this, you're familiar with ChatGPT and you're playing around with it, you really have to implement a habit of continuous learning about AI. So the way I'm doing that is automatically on my social media feeds, I follow people that talk about AI so that I'm not just doom scrolling the typical stuff you might doom scroll. I'm actually looking through a lot of stuff about AI and find somebody that you think is interesting and then just kind of make sure you're following them and kind of getting information from them that way. That's the easiest way to start absorbing, some information about AI. The next thing I do, though, is, my goodness, YouTube, Jason, YouTube, of course. Amazing. I don't know how many millions or billions of videos are on YouTube now. But find somebody that's talking about AI, and there's a ton of these videos out there, but find somebody whose voice resonates with you and you are interested in what they have to say.
That could be your voice,
Todd.
What's that? Right? Do you have a YouTube channel? This could be your voice. You could be the conduit between all of these other YouTube people and people to the law firm world. That could be your YouTube channel. Should we go ahead and announce that you're going to be launching a YouTube channel?
Well, maybe. I do have a YouTube channel, but it's been dark for a while, so I got to get going again and posting some content there. Maybe this AI stuff, which I love talking about, it's a good topic to talk about on Google's.
All right, so let's say at the firm level, right? We talked about teams. Yeah. What's one thing that a firm or a leader in a firm can implement that this month would make a nice impact, just to get started?
Well, if you are using just like free versions of ChatGPT, well, I guess let's back up. First thing to do is find out, is your staff using any of these tools in their daily workflow? You'd be surprised, right? A lot of you out there might think that, well, we haven't talked about it, so you don't know. Your firm, your team may already be using these tools, and you don't know about it, which is actually pretty scary because you need to get in front of that and, have some guardrails about your staff's use of AI. So just start the conversation with staff. Hey, are you using it? What are you using it for? What do you think are some ways that the firm could start using it to make your work easier? Even if they don't have any idea what that looks like, just start going through, again, that analysis I talked about with find the pain points, find those points of friction in their workflow, start identifying those. So we did something real simple. I just told everybody, hey, whether it's on a document on your computer or a notepad, whatever it is. Start writing a list of every time you do something that frustrates you in your workflow. And let's start identifying where we have some of those, kind of bottlenecks in the process. So that's the first thing, is just identifying where we could use AI and then figure out how to implement a solution around that. And Jason mentioned it. If you don't know how to do it, then there are consultants out there. There's going to be more consultants probably coming around on these topics in the future. There's a lot of, again, YouTube videos. The easiest thing, go ask ChatGPT how to implement some of this stuff, right? It's pretty good.
At a very minimum, it sounds like what you're describing is just start the conversation and have that conversation on a regular basis and make it clear that AI, it's cool to use AI. In fact, we encourage it. We want you to do it. Want you to explore ways, and then we're going to figure out how to, implement it in our processes. But it starts with actually having the conversation.
Absolutely. And you may have somebody on your team who's already using it, or they're got a very creative mindset that's, already ready to go and use AI. Put them, make them the team leader for kind of showing everybody else the way they're using AI or some prompts that they're using. Find somebody that's excited about it in the firm, and hopefully that's you as the lawyer or the owner of the firm, but find somebody on your team, if it's not you, that's excited about it, and then everybody get behind them and start trying to learn more about it. But staff's probably not going to go and do a lot of learning or research on their own, so that starts with you. So again, like I said, you got to have that habit of continually trying to learn more about AI, and then taking that information and then doing formal, specific, intentional training of your team. So whether that's a weekly meeting, a monthly meeting, an email that you go out, that you send out, but start having the conversation about using AI, and then start implementing and giving some training and teaching your team how to use it.
Great advice here, man. I mean, there's so much. I always know it's a good podcast when I feel like I need to go back and listen to it myself. I'm like in the conversation here, but I'm like, there's so much. I want to go back and take some notes, or at least get the transcript and have some notes. But listen, I'm here with Todd Smith. He's a longtime personal injury attorney in Orlando. We've been talking about the idea of becoming an AI law firm. And so I want you to be able to connect with Todd. You can find him at ctoddlaw.com. I'm going to have all this information in the show notes, so you'll be able to find the link and click there. But the cool thing that Todd's offering, that I think you mentioned you're starting, but he's got a new AI newsletter. You'll be able to go to his site. I'm going to provide the link in the bio where you can sign up and get that AI newsletter. How often is that going to come out? And again, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg for you, Todd. The newsletter, it's going to be the YouTube channel, it's going to be the book. You're going to be the conduit between AI and law practices.
I appreciate that, Jason. Well, I will tell you, I am still, a practicing attorney with a busy law practice and court and litigation and everything else. So I'm trying to balance, my interest in AI and teaching about it and talking about it with my law practice. But you'll probably see some more news coming from me down the road on that.
Yeah, well, cool. I mean, I'm definitely going to sign up for the newsletter because, like I said, even just in earnings, that's part of the reason I love doing this podcast is, well, I don't own a law firm. I do own a business. All the things apply, right? I get to learn all sorts of new things that apply to really any business that you're involved in. And since I'm not actually talking about the substance of the law. So in any case, connect with Todd. I'm going to provide, his LinkedIn, his Instagram. Those are the places I think that are best to connect with Todd. Again, that stuff will be in the show notes. Todd, anything else to add before we depart here?
Yeah, I just, like we said, Jason, I just want lawyers out there, just think about how they can change their mindset around AI, start thinking with AI, and think about how becoming an AI law firm will make their practice better. They'll serve their clients better. They'll probably make more money. And I think they'll probably even be happier because it just makes things fun and a lot easier to get work done.
Man, isn't that what it's all about? Make more money, be happier, doing it all in an easy, efficient way, right? That's I think what all us business owners and entrepreneurs are after. But anyway, thanks for this, Todd. This has been fantastic. Appreciate you joining me today. And I think, we'll have to reconvene some point down the road because this is all changing rather quickly. And we're going to need some updates.
It's going to move fast.
All right, Todd.
Thanks, Jason. I love the conversation. Man. It was fun. All right, man.
Yeah. All right. Take care, Todd. Thanks for listening to the Alpha Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Marsh, and I appreciate you joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other lawyers who might benefit. You can find more resources and insights on building a thriving law firm at alphalawyer.io or the Alpha Lawyer YouTube channel. Till next time, keep building the firm of your dreams so you can live your best life.